We're thinking about the books of the Bible, Joshua, this afternoon. And there's 24 chapters in the book of Joshua, quite a few verses. And even if we read quickly, I think we're going to struggle to get through it in the next 15 minutes, although Kevin did offer to try. But I thought what we'd do instead is think a little bit about who is Joshua. And Kevin used some interesting language in his introduction about me leading us through the book of Joshua. Well, that's kind of what Joshua's doing, isn't it? He is there leading the children of Israel into the land that they should inherit. So we'll think a little bit about who is Joshua, summary of the structure of the book so named, and then this question, well, why are they going into the land, which should pick up on what we've seen in earlier books of the Bible. Finally, some thoughts about what can we learn from the book, which is obviously not a complete summary. If we begin then, who is Joshua? And we're going to have a look in some passages in the book of Numbers, which we've looked at already, to give us some context about who Joshua is. So if we just move that table a little bit. We're going to go into Numbers 13, and let me read you some verses here. So in Numbers 13, Moses is in the wilderness with the children of Israel. And God tells him to send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which God says he is giving to the people of Israel. And it was to be one man from each tribe. And Moses sends these people out. And we're told that there is, from the tribe of Judah, in Numbers 13, verse 6, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. And then if we come down to verse 8, from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun. And then in Numbers 13, verse 16, we're told that Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. So Moses changes his name and calls him Joshua, which means something like Yahweh saves or Yahweh is salvation. And this is important when we think about what is Joshua doing. Well, it's about delivering the people into their inheritance, going into this land that God has promised for them. So we can see this sense that he is leading them, in the words of Kevin, into this place which God has promised to them. We can learn a little bit more about him in Numbers 13, because the spies come back in verse 25 after 40 days. They've been spying the land. And they come to Moses and Aaron and all the children of Israel in the wilderness, and they tell them what it was like. We came to the land you sent us to. Well, that makes sense. It flows with milk and honey. Excellent. And this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there, and so on. And they're not quite so keen. But Caleb says, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome. But the men who have gone up with him say, we can't go up against the people, they're stronger than we are. And the people weep as we go into Numbers 14. So the spies come back and they do not bring a good report, or certainly 10 of them. The report they bring is that they are not able to overcome and take the inheritance, which is a major problem because God has told them at the start of that chapter in Numbers 13 that he would give them the inheritance of the land. So the fact that they're then saying it couldn't happen is a bit of an issue because they're directly contradicting what God had just said to them. So they don't understand what's going on. And the reason we're looking at this is because in Numbers 14, when they're still discussing this, verse 6, Joshua, the son of Nun, who we're thinking about, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who are among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to the congregation of the people of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Don't fear them. But the congregation don't believe them and talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb. So in summary here, from those couple of chapters, what we've seen is that Joshua is one of 12 spies who was sent to see this land that God had said he would bring the children of Israel into. And of the 12 who went in, only he and Caleb came back with a good report, as it were, and said that they should go up and do this thing. And remember, God had told them that this was what was going to happen. So what we're learning from those few verses about Joshua is that he's a faithful man who believed in God. And that although 10 of the 12 people who went into the land, they saw the other people in the land and their cities, and they thought, a bit too strong for us. I'm not really sure I like the look of that. He's rather tall. This isn't a good idea. But 2 of the 10, they had faith. They understood that God would bring them into the land, and it was God who would provide their strength and their salvation, as is Joshua's name. We could look at some of these other passages, so Numbers 27, and we will look at Deuteronomy 31, but they're useful for context. We will look at Deuteronomy 31. So book of Deuteronomy, which we've also looked at. And at the start of chapter 31, Moses speaks to the children of Israel and he says, I'm 120 years old today. So he was older than most of us. And he says, I am no longer able to go in and come out. The Lord has said to me, you will not go over this Jordan. And in verse 7, Moses summons Joshua, who we're thinking about. And he speaks to him in front of all of the people. And he says, be strong and courageous. For you will go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So Joshua is being told that he will lead the children of Israel into the land that they're going to inherit. We're also being told, again, that God had sworn to the fathers of the children of Israel that they would be given this land. And we're being told that Joshua needed to be strong and courageous, that he needed not to be afraid, which seems surprising because he was one of 2 spies who went into the land and wasn't afraid. And yet what we're being told here is actually he needed encouragement. So that's quite interesting for us, isn't it? If we move on then, and think about the structure of the book. It's very small, I hadn't anticipated that. But there are 24 chapters which I've loosely grouped. So chapter 1, which we'll turn to in a moment, is thinking about what happens after the death of Moses. Joshua is taking up this sort of leading position to bring the children of Israel into the land in order that they might inherit it. Then in chapter 2 we have spies again, but this time visiting Jericho, which takes us through to the end of chapter 6 where Jericho is destroyed and Rahab is saved. Chapter 7, the children of Israel go up to fight against Ai. They've had a terrific success fighting against Jericho and they think this is going to be great. Don't send too many people, we've got this. And they turn up there and what happens is they're made to flee before the face of their enemy, and they come back and they don't understand it. And they're upset and there is crying and they say, why, God, have you delivered us into the hand of the people of the land? And the answer is because somebody in the children of Israel did something they were specifically commanded not to do. And that is the subject of chapter 7, which is about Achan and the valley of Achor. Sorry, James, I just realised you made it a lot bigger. Then we have the conquest of Ai more successfully in chapter 8. The inhabitants of Gibeon in chapter 9, who come to the children of Israel recognising that God has given the land to their hand, and they trick them effectively into making peace with them. So they recognise otherwise they will be destroyed. Chapters 10 through 12, summary of the conquest of the land, leading into the rest of the book really, which is about division of the inheritance, which isn't a surprise that so much of the book is about inheritance, because that's the point, isn't it? They're coming into their inheritance which God has promised them, including details around the cities of refuge and the Levites, and then finally in the last chapter, Joshua's last days. So that's a very brief summary of the content within maybe 60 seconds. But the important thing is this emphasis on coming into inheritance, which is the land, which is promised to them by God, and how Joshua is involved in leading them through that. And if we think more on that theme, why are they coming into the land at all? We should look to see what God said to the fathers of the children of Israel. And that's what these references are about. So firstly, in Genesis chapter 13. So God is speaking to Abraham, although here he's called Abram. So Genesis 13 verse 14. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I'll make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring can also be counted, and so on. So God had said to Abraham, this land that you can see, that you're in, that I told you to come to, I am going to give it to you and to your offspring. So this is a long-standing promise that God has made to Abraham and his descendants. If we keep going to Genesis 16, we can build on that a little more. Did I mean chapter 16? Yeah. Bear with me 1 second. I don't think so. I mean end of chapter 15, thank you, Dan. There we go. Thank you. So end of chapter 15. Don't know why I wrote down 16. Because I meant verse 16. So Genesis 15, verse 16. God is still speaking to Abraham, verse 13. And he talks about his offspring, which is what we're thinking about in verse 13, chapter 13, his descendants, that is. They're going to be sojourners in a land that's not theirs and servants there. This is the land of Egypt. Afflicted for 400 years. And we thought about this when we thought about the book of Exodus. And then I'll bring judgment on the nation that they serve, on Egypt, and so on. And they will come back here, verse 16, in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So God had made a promise to Abraham that his descendants would inherit this land, but he said it's not going to be yet, because I am waiting for, in the words here, the iniquity of the Amorites to be complete. So this is addressing the question of why then, I suppose, with Joshua, why this timing? It's because the iniquity of the Amorites is full. God says, I'm giving you the land, that's the promise, that's why they're going in. Why then? Because this point has been reached that God is waiting for. So we've got some answers there as to why they're going in the land and also why then. I think we should keep going into the final things I want to talk about. What can we learn from the book of Joshua? Well, obviously there's lots of things, but one particular thing I want to pick up comes at the beginning and the end of the book. In fact, it's almost bookended by it. So if we think in Joshua chapter 1, where, as I said, Moses has died and Joshua is going to lead the children of Israel. And we see these words, Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving them, which we've already seen. God is the one who's doing this. And he's speaking to him, and he says in verse 5, no man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave or forsake you. And that sounds like Joshua should be feeling pretty confident. No one's going to be able to stand before you all the days of your life. That's quite good, isn't it? I'm going to be with you just like I was with Moses. Excellent, I can do this. I'm not going to leave you or forsake you. This is great. God is behind me. You know, no one can stand against me. That sounds pretty easy. But yet somehow it isn't. Because God then says to Joshua, you need to be strong and courageous. Which is really interesting, isn't it? God has said he's going to be with him, yet he still needs help and encouragement, and he needs to be strong and courageous. Being careful to do according to the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you, it says there. And this phrase comes up a number of times in this chapter. If we go down to verse 16, the people respond back to Joshua. All that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so will we obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your commandment and disobeys your words, whatever you command him, you shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So we have this repeating idea that Joshua needs to be strong and courageous, which is really interesting thinking about the fact that God is with him and there's need to follow the commandments. So if we come into Joshua 24, our last reference, this is at the end of the life of Joshua. And Joshua 24 verse 1, he gathers the tribes to him, summons the elders and so on, and he speaks to them the words of God, verse 2, which talk about what God has done from them. How, verse 3, he took their father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through the land of Canaan, which we've read a few bits of. The descendants of Abraham through into Egypt, which we saw when we looked at the book of Exodus, all the way down to verse 13. I gave you a land on which you had not laboured, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the fruit of the vineyards and olive orchards you did not plant. So God is explaining the great things that he has done for the children of Israel, bringing them up, choosing them, and now giving them this land that they have inherited, that they can dwell in, even though they didn't build the cities, and they can eat the fruit of the land, even though they didn't plant the vineyards or the orchards. And there's a necessary response, which is to fear the Lord, verse 14, and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness, and to put away other gods, verse 14. And as we see in verse 15, Joshua says this, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And the people answer, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers up out of the land of Egypt," and so on. So they recognize God has done these amazing things for them, and in consequence, they're serving him. They have this fear and response to him, just as Joshua does, because he's learned that he can be strong and courageous because God is always behind him. And when we come down to the very end of the chapter, so Joshua is buried, verse 29, 110, in his inheritance, because of course they've come into the land and inherited it. And it says in verse 31, "Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, and had known all the work that the Lord did for Israel." And so what we see here is a really useful lesson for us, isn't it? Because Joshua is at the start there. He's seen these amazing things with Moses. God tells him, "I'm 100% behind you. No one can stand against you." And yet he still also has to tell Joshua, "Be strong and have a good courage," because it's not easy. And the children of Israel have seen all the wonderful things recorded in the book of Joshua, the works that God does, bringing the children of Israel into their inheritance. That could be the summary for the book. They've seen these things. And because they've seen and remembered them, well, the elders that saw and remembered those things, they guided the children of Israel so that they served God. And it's when they started to forget the things that God had done for them that they then went astray. So from our perspective, when we read the book of Joshua, we can see the great things that God does for his people, and we try to remember them, and we try to be strong and courageous, and to trust in him as we perhaps seek an inheritance of our own.